On January 20th, 1987, one of the most corrupt and powerful politicians in the USSR was arrested. His arrest was so unexpected that the entire Soviet party feared for their own positions. Yuri Churbanov, the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, was put behind bars. His career illustrated how deeply personal connections and political power were intertwined in the USSR. His position allowed him to participate in and protect widespread corruption. His arrest during Mikhail Gorbachev's anti-corruption campaign highlighted the widespread dishonesty in the system and exposed one of the key issues that contributed to the weakening of the Soviet Union. Now, let's look closer to this event. In March 1980, Yuri Churbanov was appointed first Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, one of the most powerful roles in the Soviet Union. It wasn't just his skills or experience that secured this position. His marriage to Galina Brezhneva, Leonid Brezhnev's daughter, played a key role. This connection gave him access to the USSR's highest circles of power, shielding him from scrutiny and allowing him to rise unchecked. But this is only the beginning of his crimes. Uzbekistan was the Soviet Union's main cotton producer, and Moscow heavily relied on the region to meet high production quotas. These quotas, however, were nearly impossible to achieve, so officials in Uzbekistan began falsifying production reports, claiming they harvested millions of tons of cotton that didn't exist. Here is how the scheme worked. Local officials reported inflated cotton yields to Moscow. The central government allocated payments based on these fake figures. The funds, billions of rubles, were then divided among corrupt officials at every level, from local administrators to high-ranking Soviet leaders like Churbanov. The scale was staggering. Between 1976 and 1983 alone, the scheme siphoned off an estimated 4 billion rubles, which would be roughly 60 billions in today's USD when adjusted for inflation. This money could have been used to improve the lives of ordinary citizens, but instead enriched a corrupt elite. For the Soviet Union, the scandal exposed a deeply flawed economic system. Resources were wasted on lies, and the central government's inability to verify production numbers highlighted inefficiencies. Worse, the diversion of rivers to irrigate cotton fields caused the Aral Sea to shrink dramatically, turning what was once a thriving fishing hub into an ecological disaster. Entire communities were left without livelihoods as the water disappeared and the land became barren. For ordinary Uzbek people, the consequences were devastating. Workers were often forced to meet unrealistic targets under dangerous conditions, which sometimes led to fatal outcomes. There are accounts of laborers collapsing in the fields from exhaustion or illness caused by exposure to pesticides and harsh weather. Local children were also enlisted to pick cotton to meet inflated quotas, disrupting their education and exposing them to unsafe conditions. Meanwhile, the profits from the fake yields never reached the workers or improved the local infrastructure. Instead, the money enriched corrupt officials. Additionally, the scandal deepened inequality in Uzbekistan, with a small elite benefiting at the expense of the broader population. While the Uzbek Cotton Scandal was the most infamous case linked to Churbanov, it wasn't the only one. Investigators also found bribery for appointments. Churbanov accepted payments from officials in other Soviet republics to secure them key positions in the government. Misuse of ministry resources. He allegedly used Ministry of Internal Affairs assets for personal projects, such as constructing private vacation homes for himself and his allies. So on January 20th, 1987, Churbanov's arrest took place under intense scrutiny in Moscow. After months of mounting evidence, prosecutors acted swiftly to detain him. The arrest itself was meticulously planned to avoid leaks, as Churbanov's connections could have allowed him to escape persecution or destroyed evidence. When security forces arrived at his residence early in the morning, Churbanov was reportedly caught off guard but maintained his composure. Investigators seized documents, financial records, and correspondence that linked him directly to the bribery schemes in Uzbekistan. News of his arrest spread quickly, creating shockwaves among Soviet elites who feared their own dealings might come to light next. The timing of the arrest was critical. By targeting a figure so close to Brezhnev's family, Gorbachev sent a strong signal that no one was above the law. For years, Churbanov's immunity had been assumed, but his detention marked a turning point in the USSR's approach to tackling corruption. During the trial, witnesses detailed how bribes were exchanged. One official testified about delivering suitcases filled with cash to Churbanov. The sums were staggering, and the evidence was undeniable. Churbanov was sentenced to 12 years in prison, though he served only 5, released early for health reasons. Churbanov's arrest sent shockwaves through the Soviet leadership. For the first time, someone from Brezhnev's inner circle faced accountability. Other corrupt officials panicked, fearing they might be next. Some quickly destroyed evidence or distanced themselves from ongoing schemes. The investigation didn't stop with Churbanov. Over 4,000 officials were implicated in the Cotton Scandal. Many were arrested and convicted. Key figures in Uzbekistan, including party leaders and factory managers, faced charges ranging from embezzlement to fraud. Some committed suicide rather than face trial, while others fled. For example, several key officials in charge of regional cotton production fled to remote areas or attempted to relocate their families abroad, hoping to avoid persecution. However, some were eventually tracked down and brought back for trial by Soviet authorities, demonstrating the reach and determination of the investigators. After Churbanov's arrest, his wife Galina Brezhneva faced public humiliation. Known for her extravagant lifestyle and scandals of her own, she withdrew from the spotlight. Reports suggest she tried to use her remaining connection to help her husband, but found her self-influence waning after her father's death. Galina spent her later years in relative obscurity, battling health and financial problems. Churbanov's case revealed more than just corruption. It exposed the fragility of the Soviet Union's economic and political systems. The arrest was a message. The old ways of nepotism and unchecked power were coming to an end. But it was too late. The damage had already been done, and the USSR would collapse just a few years later. The scandal also left a lasting scars on Uzbekistan. The Aral Sea's decline is still considered one of the world's worst environmental disasters. Meanwhile, the country's reliance on cotton remains a source of controversy, with accusations of forced labor continuing into the 21st century. Churbanov's story is a stark reminder of how corruption can hollow out even the most powerful systems. It shows how greed and deception, when left unchecked, can lead to economic ruin, environmental destruction, and the collapse of public trust. While his arrest was a step toward accountability, it also marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union as a superpower. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I'm Natasha and see you tomorrow.